Draft pages of Chapter 102 for Dragon Ball Super just dropped, confirming that we'll finally see Goku vs. Gohan. But just from these drafts alone, we get a bunch of info. So I'm here to cover what might end up happening in the chapter and why this is so important in general. Thanks to Herms98 for the translations as usual. The drafts start off where the last chapter ended, with Goku just commenting on Goku's ki, saying that it was amazing, and he immediately invites him to go fight on Beerus's planet. After Gohan changes outfits, Goku brings everyone there, including Goten, Trunks, and Carmine, as well as random Red Ribbon Soldier number 15. Goku starts by asking what Gohan's technique is, and he wonders if it's Super Saiyan 2 or 3. And he officially name drops Beast here, because if you remember from the movie, it actually never was named, same with the manga arc. We had a name, but in verse, no one actually ever said the name for it, so this is the first time we get this. Interestingly enough, Piccolo was the one to name it, and we get some more info too about the fact that Piccolo was training Gohan, so now Gohan can transform into Beast at will. Which is important because it means that Gohan's not only able to access Beast now, but he's stronger than he was in the movie because he's been training. He even blatantly says he's going to start training more because he always needs to be ready to fight, just like Goku wanted. Honestly, I liked Gohan as is, but this is obviously a statement that's going to please many fans. What's also important about the Piccolo mention is the fact that he says Piccolo's grown stronger too, naturally with his orange form. Goku says he wants to spar with Piccolo next, and Vegeta then asks Trunks if he's been doing anything. And that's the gist of the leaks, besides the fact that the chapter is literally just called Goku vs. Gohan, which confirms that this chapter is mostly going to be about that fight. The drafts themselves are short, but I'm here to talk about why this fight is so important and what this chapter could actually hold for the future. Even based on the draft pages alone, there's a lot of important stuff we can see here. First off, in my opinion, I think this is a great way to finish the superhero arc because technically, I guess this is still part of that arc, especially considering the fact that Goten, Trunks, Carmine, and number 15 are there. So, a really cool addition that the movie didn't have. And also, one reason why the chapter is so important because this officially will end the arc, at least I'm assuming. What I'm guessing is that the fight doesn't go for the entire chapter. Remember, DBS chapters are usually pretty long due to it being monthly. We still have more than enough pages for the actual fight to happen, and maybe something at the end teasing the next arc because this is how Dragon Ball Super usually does that stuff. Look back at the end of the Tournament of Power, and for the concluding chapter in that, we see Moro. Look back at the conclusion to Moro, and at the end of that, we see Granola. The Granola arc didn't do this though, to be fair, so it does remain to be seen, but that was also a unique case because the movie adaptation came right after. Here, this is something original, and we're supposedly going into an original arc next. There is a good chance we get some info about that, and either way, it's going to be a pretty hyped chapter because we'll have this entire fight. In terms of the interesting setup we have, well, first of all, we get to mention that Goku wants to fight Piccolo again, which is awesome because we finally get a tease for a Goku vs. Piccolo rematch. Now, I don't know if this will actually happen, but Piccolo's grown a lot in power and he's continuously being touted as being on everyone else's level now. And you guys know me, Piccolo's my favorite character, that makes me really happy. So there is a chance this could actually happen because it's not like it's going to be a complete wash. And for those of you who did actually watch Dragon Ball, you know the last Goku vs. Piccolo fight was really important and really awesome. The 23rd World Tournament is my favorite arc in the series, so a callback to that, especially after all this time, that's one of the few nostalgia callbacks that I'd actually like, because it's worth something. Just as likely, I feel like we could even see a Piccolo vs. Vegeta fight eventually, which people of course have been wanting for a while. Of course, this was never overtly mentioned or confirmed, but with Goku saying that he eventually wants to fight Piccolo, and again with the fact that Piccolo's power is being touted as on their level, there's at least a chance now that that could happen. Also, while still on the topic of Piccolo, let's go back to what I said about Piccolo actually training Gohan here. It's interesting to learn that he was the one to name Beast, so at least we have an actual source for it in the series now. But again, the fact that Gohan actually has control over this form now and can transform into it willingly, that's pretty huge. I have seen some confusion with people asking if this means he's mastered the form, and him being able to willingly transform into it doesn't mean he's actually mastered it. Like, a good example is how Goku wasn't able to master Super Saiyan until the Cell games. But he was able to willingly transform into it years beforehand. Not too long after the Frieza encounter, in fact. So this means Gohan at least has done some sort of training to actually tap into it at will, but it doesn't necessarily mean the form is mastered. If the form even has anything to master. Maybe this is actually just its full power. Which is also another important thing from this chapter. We'll actually learn more about Beast, supposedly. Because we know next to nothing about it now. There's one actual statement about it from Toriyama saying that this is the manifestation of Gohan's beast that was within him, which is still very vague in its own right. And people of course bring up Xenoverse with the fact that when you use Ultimate you can go beyond it with Beast, but that's just the video game, that's not confirmed. So hopefully this chapter actually tells us more about the form, which I'm assuming it will. Either Goku will ask more about it or Gohan will just explain more about it. Because again, the fact that he's trained means he actually knows more about the form itself. Not to mention, Whis is there, so maybe he sees something interesting. Especially considering that the last arc ended without us knowing who the actual strongest in the universe was. With Whis never truly getting that answer, so maybe he will get that answer here if Gohan actually is the strongest. We'll see though. Doesn't guarantee anything, but it's worth mentioning here. Another big thing from this chapter is that Gohan might actually meet Broly for the first time, which is a character interaction I've been waiting to see. Whether or not they'll actually interact here for a long amount of time, I can't say for certain. But Broly still is on the planet, so this is the first time they're in the same place as each other. I'm assuming at the very least they'll introduce themselves. I feel like there could be a really cool dynamic there, so it would be interesting to see in the future. And now for some predictions as to how the fight will actually go. So there's a couple interesting things to remember here. For one, we haven't seen anything about how Goku has grown since the last arc. Through the entirety of the superhero movie and the arc in the manga, Goku's been in base. He did fight Vegeta, but we have no clue about how much he's grown in terms of Ultra Instinct or just in terms of raw power. So this will at least give us that answer. Plus, we don't truly know how far Gohan's power goes. Yeah, we have some vague statements, and we know he could easily outclass Cell Max. But alongside the fact that we might learn the mechanics of the form finally, we could actually get some sort of real power statement about him, because we technically don't really know where he is. And with the fact that he's training again, this is how I think it'll go. I could be wrong, these are purely predictions, so take this all with a grain of salt. I think it will be stated or shown that Gohan actually outclasses Goku in terms of raw strength. But there will be a point made that Goku's skill far outclasses Gohan, so he still has a lot of room to grow. With the latter part of what I just said, that's objectively true. Not to say Gohan isn't a skilled warrior, but especially with him slacking off sometimes, or not fully focusing on training, plus the fact that he has like half of Goku's experience in terms of years of life, and the fact that Goku has Ultra Instinct, such an amazing form. It's objectively true that Goku's skill far outclasses Gohan, which I think will be a really good outcome because it'll set up the fact that Gohan's the strongest, but also has something to work towards still, because even though he does have all that raw power, he can still refine it even further with raw skill and technique. Plus, I think that's a pretty reasonable outcome too, because it means that Goku's not just instantly outclassed by Gohan due to a power gap, but at the same time, Gohan's power-up gets a ton of value by just being one of the strongest things ever. Discussing with some of my friends, one of them actually said that the fight might actually have a real conclusion, and it'll be interrupted somehow. Honestly, I think this is just as likely. This is something that's pretty in line with what's done in the Super manga. Unless it's an incredibly important fight, like the final fight in an arc, a lot of fights just end up getting interrupted. I'm not saying that's a problem, I actually like that. That happens a lot in original Dragon Ball 2, as well as Z, of course. Which is more of a reason why this is actually likely to happen here. I would love for the fight to have an actual conclusion and remain uninterrupted, especially with the fact that the chapter is supposed to focus on the fight itself. It's literally named after the fight. But also keep in mind that it could easily be interrupted too, likely leading into the next arc somehow. But at the very least, I'm assuming it will give us some sort of statement about Gohan's power, telling us how Beast works, how strong it truly is in comparison to like Goku and Vegeta for example, and give him a goal in terms of what he needs to do next. But already, just from these draft pages alone, this chapter is going to be a pivotal one for Dragon Ball Super. We finally get a true Goku versus Gohan fight after all this time. We finally get to learn more about Gohan's new Beast form. We get overt references to Piccolo being as strong as he is now, and being relevant to the story again. At least power-wise, he always was relevant to the story. But now he's at least somewhat close to the level of the other three and doesn't just fall behind. All in all, there's a lot of cool things that this chapter could show us, and again, this is just based off the drafts and my own predictions. We can get something completely out of left field here, especially if there's a new arc introduced. For the first time in a while, I'm actually really hyped about the Dragon Ball Super manga. And based on the reactions I've seen to these drafts, it seems like a lot of people feel the same exact way. But let me know what you think below. What's going to happen in this chapter and what might happen in the next arc? And also, let me know if you like these type of videos. I've never really done chapter reviews or draft reviews before, but if you like me covering news about the manga, I'd love to do more of it, so let me know below and I might actually do that. Drop a like, subscribe, all that usual stuff, and as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.